Hi, my name is Kristin Vaughn. I'm a survivor of sex trafficking, and I have worked as a survivor leader in the anti-trafficking movement since 2008. I wanted to tell you a little bit about my story and a little bit about what I'm doing now. I am from Southwest Virginia. I grew up in a very lovely home and childhood. I know that if you've watched any of the other videos on this page, you will hear stories about many of my brothers and sisters that were exploited as children. That was not my story. And for a long time, because of that, I didn't feel like I had a story. I felt like, I had this amazing, upbringing and this amazing childhood with these amazing parents, and I never experienced any abuse or neglect or molestation or anything like that that my brothers and sisters have often experienced. But we still ended up in the same place. And I think the juxtaposition of showing that and telling that story of how we went through very different childhoods, very different educational experiences, very different upbringings, and we still ended up in the same place. So if this is a sign to just let you know that trafficking does not discriminate, addiction does not discriminate, mental health does not discriminate. It doesn't matter who you are, how much money you have, where you live, where you grew up, how you grew up. You can still be vulnerable at any time. And traffickers prey upon vulnerabilities. That is the number one way that they kind of worm their way into our lives. So just to tell you a little bit about my story. When I did very well in middle school, high school, I was captain of a lot of things. I lettered in a lot of things. I was very high achieving. But I had a very serious undiagnosed mental health situation. It was diagnosed, but I think it was incorrectly diagnosed. And so I would jump from being on, multiple medications to no medications to different medications. And I just never really felt like that I was being helped. And, coupling all that with being a teenager and, living in a rural area, and it just all of it just was so much. So by the time that I went to college at age 17, and I was very, very naive. I was very sheltered growing up, and that's not a testament against my parents, like, they didn't, tell me the ways of the world, but they protected me, and they made sure that nothing could ever hurt me. And so then when I was out in a situation to where all the things could hurt me, I kind of didn't know what to do. So I went to college at 17. Me and two other girls we rushed for a sorority, and we went to a fraternity party, and we were all three dosed with what we think is GHB. Which, in the late 90s, early 2000s was a big kind of a date rape drug. Sometimes you can have memory from it, sometimes you don't. I don't have any memory from what happened, but it was the first time that I'd ever had sex, and it was and I got pregnant. I chose to have the pregnancy terminated for a lot of reasons, a lot of health reasons that I won't go into here about, but there were a lot of reasons that I chose to have that decision, that I chose to do that decision. So after that, the college basically called my parents and were like, she's not going to class, she's not showering, she's not eating, she's in the bed all the time, like, you need to come get her. So my parents came and got me, and they took me to a treatment center, and I got off the drugs that I had got back on because of that whole depression, and everything was good. I started working at a very prominent restaurant in Virginia, and started training to be a chef. And I was so proud of myself, and I was doing so good, but I didn't have my car, right? So I had to walk to work. And I was walking to work. It was just 2 or 3 blocks to the bus stop, and it was about 8 blocks to my job. So depending on what time I got up, I was either walking to the bus or to the job. So there's a little store right beside the bus stop. And I would stop there and I would get cigarettes, or, I'd grab a soda or something on the way to work. Well, there were these 3 girls there. And they would always like talk to me and or they bum a cigarette off me, or they give me a cigarette, or then it like progressed, and they were always there. And they were very, very friendly to me. And I was in a new city, in a new occupation, on a huge depression, with an undiagnosed, and untreated major mental illness. So I was what, we in Virginia call ripe for the pickings. And they kind of saw me coming. And come to find out later, these girls were actually paid to groom me. And that's what they did. They became my best friends. They became my sisters. They became my family. I was estranged from my family at the time. And they just stepped in and did what I call is very similar to love bombing, which is it's a very something they do in cults, where they just sort of like just attack you with like love, and like we're your family, and you can depend on us, and just all the things that you need at that moment. They see the vulnerabilities, and they provide the opportunities for you to feel safe, and for you to feel comfortable, and for you to feel like you're in a family. And that's what they did. So after a certain amount of time, obviously I guess started doing drugs with them again. I was completely unable to continue to keep my home. And they were like, hey, why don't you move in with us? And at the time, that seemed like a great idea. I was 23, and I was not speaking to my parents. I know there, means of, any financial income. I was not working, and I'd failed out of my lifelong dream was to be an attorney, and I was on the pre-law program track at the college that I was at. So to have basically failed out of college, to have had an abortion, to have just felt like I disappointed everybody in my life, and my family, my friends and myself. I was at the bottom. And so when these people came along, it was like the perfect storm of exploitation to happen. So that was where it began, the House of Horrors. And just to let you know, as of 4 years ago, the house that I'm going to tell you about has since been razed to the ground. It no longer exists. It is an empty field. There may or may not be some wildflowers there that some people that I may or may not know have planted there. But it no longer exists because it was so nefarious and there were so many terrible things that happened there. But this was just a gentleman who owned this house, and he worked at a regular, 9-to-5 job, and you never would have thought that he would have had anything to do with trafficking. But there were 5 bedrooms in this house, and he allowed the drug and the human traffickers to live there, and I was there willingly for about 3 months. And I realized that this is not for me. This is not where I want to be. This is not who I am. And I tried to leave. And that's when we were locked in the basement. Myself and 2 other girls were locked in the basement. And the only time that we were let out was when we were made to work. If you want to call it that. If you want to call it work. And that was it. The way that I got out, and this is why doing this particular video is so important to me, is I am not military at all, but my family is. And I come from a family of service, and I come from a family of military. And between my family members, many of who are either active duty or retired military, I was able to get out. They found out where I was, and they came and got me. And that was huge for me, because not very many victims have the opportunity to get out. For me personally, I feel like that was a gift. That was a gift from my higher power. That was a gift from God. And I believe that with that gift comes a responsibility. And for me, that responsibility means doing everything that I can to help others get out. So I am now the CEO and founder of an organization called Second and 50. It's called Second and 50 because we don't even really start at until second chances, right? Because survivors need so many chances. Because so many survivors don't get the opportunity to even start at a first chance. They might not, the barriers that are created for survivors of trafficking, whether it be sex trafficking, labor trafficking, domestic servitude. Most of us don't even get the opportunity to start out until our second or third or 10th or 50th chance. And that's what I care about, and that's what my heart is. And so I hope that anyone, viewing this, if you'll just take a little time, watch the other videos of my brothers and sisters on this page. There's some amazing individuals, and just please be aware that anybody listening to me right now, that it can hear my voice right now, within 30 to 50 miles of your house, at the minimum, there's trafficking going on. Somebody's being trafficked. A young girl is being trafficked. A young boy is being trafficked. And an older woman is being trafficked. Like, these are things that people just don't think about. And so I really hope that, you're able to take away from watching all these videos and the amazing things that survivors are doing. One of the things that I say is, and this is not my quote, this is from somewhere else, the people closest to the problem are the people closest to the solution. And that it's really not a truer statement than in this sector, in this field. Survivors are the people that know, all of the ins and the outs and how we can shut these systems down. And so listening to survivors, centering survivors in your organization, paying survivors, making sure that survivors have, not just a seat at the table, but like a voice at the table where they're actually listened to. This is the way that we're going to stop trafficking. This is the way that we're going to stop these systems of exploitation. This is the way that we're going to save boys and girls and women and men. You have to center survivors in front, in your organization. You have to listen to what survivors have to say. You have to listen to our input, and consult with us. There are some organizations that are doing some amazing, amazing work, and I guarantee you, if you look at the build-up and the foundation of that organization, you will find survivors in key areas, in key positions. So thank you for the opportunity for listening to me, and I hope that you're able to take something away from this.